Is Warhammer too complicated? Now, before we get into this video, first I want to show off my standing desk. Check it out. It moves. I've been wanting one of these for a really long time, and so I'm very happy that my desk can move on its own now. So, I have been playing Warhammer for a long time. And like, when I say a long time, I do mean an especially long time. I know there are people out there in the comments, thank you so much for commenting, let me know things, who have been playing Warhammer since I was but a wee lad plus 20 years. But when I was but a wee lad, I picked up my very first edition of Warhammer and had a look. This is Warhammer 5th edition with the Bretonnians and the Lizardmen at the time. Absolutely fell in love with the game, and it was a blast. And so when I see images like this that Games Workshop puts on its website to say, hey, look at our game, play our game, isn't it a ton of fun? I agree, and this is what I want to experience when I play Warhammer. I want to show off the models that I've painted, I want to roll some dice, I want to hang out with my friends, and I want to play the cool war game. Here's the problem. I have explained Warhammer to people before. And as I sit people down and I attempt to explain the game of Warhammer, I'm not dumping the truck. Right? My fiance and I once visited a Warhammer store when we were first dating. I was just kind of explaining this little nerd hobby thing that I have. And there were people waiting outside. It was a big release day, and so, it ended up being kind of a fun experience. But she said, hey, I introduced my fiance to some of the people who were out there and just said, hey, here's my fiance. She's never played Warhammer before. And this person who heard that, the very first thing that they decided to go into was a long tirade on the lore of Warhammer, specifically Age of Sigmar, and to talk about like all the realms and how they interact with each other. And again, I started playing Warhammer back when it was Fantasy Old World, and so like I'm confused as I'm listening to this. And my fiance is looking at me like, yeah, I don't understand what's happening here. And I get it. And I think some of that has to do with the fact that Warhammer, as a rule, is complicated. It just is. Okay, so let's say that you wanted to get into Warhammer. For example, if that was a thing you were interested in, well, you would probably want to go pick up the core book. And if you wanted to, you could grab it from Amazon for $55. I just checked this morning. And that's, 15% off or whatever MSRP. You could probably find it on eBay for less. If you wanted to bust out the core book for $40K, you could. Or, if you wanted to, you could own Leviathan. You could order the Age of Sigmar one like I had. I bought this when it came out with the Aurochs and the Cruel Boys. It's a lot of fun. Giant book, tons of lore, right? Lots of models, lots of cool stuff. This was great. But you can't just buy the rule book, right? You need some miniatures in order to play Warhammer. Now, of course, you could use your own miniatures, some army men if you wanted to, just to learn how to play, but more than likely you're going to buy some miniatures. So you could, instead of buying the giant rule book, just buy the introductory set. Right, another $55 on eBay, and it comes with 5 Space Marines and some, I believe it's Termagants. It comes with some Tyranids. And then these guys would let you know, okay, here are your models. They're push fit. Here's some paint as well. Here's the introductory rules. This is how you play the game. Okay, so you could probably learn how to play the game that way, but what if you wanted to play more than just those few Space Marines and few Tyranids that came out? Well, you would need to buy either Codex Tyranids or Codex Space Marines in order to play the game. So now at this point, you're referencing 2 rule books, right? You're referencing the main rule book, the core rule book, hopefully the little one, and your codex. But that's not all you're doing. You are now getting into a problem that I had the very first time I showed up to my first adult, real me, Age of Sigmar tournament. Now, I'm an Empire player. I've been playing Empire forever. And so I had all the models. I had the models from 1990 when Warhammer, I want to say 7th edition, came out with Empire versus Orcs. And I bought that edition, and it was a blast. And actually went on eBay and found a lot of spearmen. I found a lot of handgunners and cannons and things like that. It was a lot of fun. I show up to the tournament with rulebook number 1 that you needed, as well as my Cities of Sigmar book here that I had just purchased so that I could play my guys. The problem was, as I'm looking through this book here, I get to my cannons and I'm trying to play them, and the person who is in charge of the tournament lets me know, oh man, I'm so sorry. The cannons aren't good anymore. How would I know this? Well, they got errataed in one of these books that I purchased. Here's the General's Handbook for 2018 that I bought to learn how to play pitched battles, and the General's Handbook for 2019 that I learned how to play, and then these 2 books now for pitched battle profiles in 2021 and pitched battles of 2021. At any rate, I found out that my models didn't work. And I wouldn't know this if I had just bought this guy and this guy, but there was other things that I needed to know in order to learn how to play this game. Warhammer 40K does this same thing. So if you go onto the Warhammer community page, you'll find a quick start guide. We'll talk about that in a second. You'll also find rules commentary, a long document that lets you know what all of the rules changes have been. And if that weren't enough, you then also can download the balance data slate, which lets you know that there are other additional rules on top of the rules that are in your codex that have changed or that have happened. And then also, please don't forget the Minotaurium Field Manual, which is, again, more rules that you are attempting to learn how to play the game with. It feels needlessly complicated to know the rules, not just to learn them and play them and figure them out. It just feels too complicated to know them. Like when I showed up to my Age of Sigmar tournament, I was excited. I had these models that I haven't played with in forever, and I was busting them out for the first time in my adult life. It was going to be fun. And I had to change my army on the spot. I actually even had to download the app in order to put together a new list right there. There was no way I was going to play the tournament at that point. Obviously, the organizer and I just ended up playing a friendly, casual game so that I could relearn everything that I thought I knew. It just feels like needing all of this plus paper that you have to print out in 2024. It just feels needlessly complicated in order to play the game. And then there's another problem on top of that as well. So let's just look at that quick start guide that Warhammer 40K offers. I'm not even going to pick on Warhammer Age of Sigmar, just Warhammer 40K. I have it pulled up right here so that we can look at it. This is the easy quick start guide, right? So we're looking at this and we're scrolling through it, and this is what Warhammer is trying to tell you, Games Workshop is trying to tell you, is the easy way to pick up their game. This says, this guide will help you get started with games of 40K. For more information, see the core rules, the other book that you've got to buy. Okay, Warhammer battles are played in a series of battle rounds. In each of these, both players have a turn, broken into different phases that must be completed in order. So, if you've been around for a long time, you already know what's happening, right? You understand the rules. And as I have explained this to my kids as we've learned to play, they are usually the same. Command phase, movement phase, shooting phase, charge phase, fight phase. it just feels needlessly complicated. So I understand. In the command phase, you've got stratagems. We'll talk about those in a second. But then the movement phase is one thing, where your troops are moving. You are just moving your pieces around the board. But then there's the charge phase, which is a different thing, where your little guys move again. Why? Why does these have to be two separate things? Can we put all the movement together, please? Would that be great? No? We can't? Okay, fine. So we have here this. And I don't even want to get into the shooting part of it right now. I just want to look at the making attacks. The way that Games Workshop says we should make attacks. This is how they explain it, right? Use the following sequence to make attacks one at a time. First, hit roll. Roll a d6 per attack. Aim to equal or beat the BS, the ballistic skill, right? Or, the combat skill, whatever, that you have there. You are trying to make that happen, right? An unmodified hit roll of 6 is called critical hit, always successful. Fantastic. So first, hit roll. Second, wound roll. Compare the attack's strength with the target's toughness as shown below. An unmodified wound of 6 is called a critical wound and is always successful. Fantastic. So you roll 6 in your tricks, you're good. Then they go in hard with math. I want to show this to you again. All right, here's the math. Attack strength versus target toughness. Strength is twice or more than twice the toughness. 2. Strength is greater than toughness. 3. Strength is equal to the toughness. 4. Strength is less than the toughness. 5. Strength is half or less than the toughness. 6. Okay. So the first thing we do is we roll to hit. And then we roll to wound. And I get that Warhammer and Games Workshop think that those need to be two separate things. But why? I understand if I take a firearm and shoot it at a thing, right? We have to see if I'm going to hit it and if the bullet itself is going to be strong enough to pierce whatever it is. If it's a tree trunk, is it going to go through? And all that stuff. Why does it have to be two things? Can we assume that the person who is holding the laser, if they can shoot the thing, can we make one dice roll be the thing all of a sudden? I digress. So then they go, okay, allocate the attack. Oh, but wait, we're not done. We must then do a saving throw. The saving throw is whether or not the guy with the laser has hit you successfully, wounded you successfully, and now you get to determine if your armor successfully has defended the attack. Well, as I am explaining this to someone, it does not feel intuitive. I've been playing Warhammer for 20 years, okay? More than 20 years at this point. I'm getting old. But it's the idea of saying, okay, does it hit, does it hurt you, and does your armor fix it? Why do those have to be 3 separate rolls? Can we put some of them together like other games have? One dice roll, does it work? Other dice roll, do you defend? That seems much easier to me. That's fine. It's just fine. Okay, but then we keep on going to all of the stuff here. Again, this is the quick start guide. You have the charge phase, which is different than the fight phase and different than the movement phase. You roll 2 dice just to figure out if your guys actually get there. Why do we randomize the charging part? Do your people forget how to run? Do they not know how to get from point A to point B? They've successfully moved, they were able to move before. Can't they get there now? I don't understand why we have to randomize the charge. It seems to be unnecessarily complicated, which feels just like the theme to me at this point. All right, so then there's all this here, and then even after you do all of these wonderful keywords, which I'm glad they put into a document, then you get to the stratagems, all right? You get to the things you get to do later. Now, when I have been playing with my kids, I don't play the stratagems. We don't do that because it's taking an already complicated game and making it even more so. because there are stratagems that can happen on either player's turn, on your turn, or your opponent's turn. You've developed CP, you can use command points either whenever you want, you can hold them, you can use them, and some of these command point things just feel unnecessarily complicated or potentially game altering. Like this meme where it says, I'll go first to show you how to play. First I play this card, it activates this card, which lets me draw 6 cards, and if any of those cards are spells, I cast them instantly, and the guy goes, is that my turn now? You've already lost. Like, I have heard of so many people getting tabled on turn 1 playing this game because not only does it feel like it's needlessly complicated, one person does everything that their army does at once. So it's quite possible that your army gets completely wiped out in the first turn of the game, and then by the time you get to play Warhammer, your army is almost half dead. That just doesn't sound fun. Now I get you can hide your guys behind, ruins and cover and things like that, but that just, it looks silly. And it doesn't feel any fun. Now, okay, I know that these are points that I've talked about in this video. Wait, it should be up here. In this video here, where I talked about why I quit Warhammer. And one of the reasons I quit was because the game just felt needlessly complicated. And is it complicated? Is it too complicated? Is a little bit of a different question. Some people love complicated games. Like, that's fine. It doesn't need to be bad because it's complicated. But to say then that complicated equals strategy and depth just feels disingenuous. Chess is not that difficult to learn, but it is strategically deep. Checkers is less complicated, and so, yeah, it's less strategically deep. There's still some fun to be had. You can enjoy a game of checkers just as much as you can enjoy a game of chess. So is Warhammer too complicated? It might not be too complicated, but it's complicated enough to make me want to quit playing it. And probably that makes little Ronald sad. Like young Ronald, who bought his very first models and Warhammer guys, and I still have my very first models. I keep them, I treasure them. They're a ton of fun. But to me, the game is just too complicated for me to enjoy it. If it's the right amount of complicated for you, and you thought that when they went from 9th edition to 10th edition that it made the game less complicated and therefore less fun, that's fine. Play 9th or play a more complicated war game. They are out there. For me, I am really enjoying games like One Page Rules, where the game is a little less complicated, but just as strategically deep. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you want to have a discourse with me in the comments? I'd love to hear. Please leave a comment. I'll talk to you down there. I promise. My channel is small enough to where we can have a pretty good conversation. I would love to hear from you. And if you're enjoying me talking about wargaming and one-page rules and Warhammer and things like that, do me a favor. Hit the like button on the video and consider subscribing. I really enjoy sharing this hobby of wargaming with you, but as far as me and Warhammer, for me, it's a little too complicated.